Welcome everybody to the third in a series of 5 for this Discover With Me Parenting and Caregiver Workshop. My name is Corrine Barberina. I'm the Senior Library Services Manager of Collections and Community here at Irving Public Library. And with us today, we have Janelle and Donnie, who is a registered dietitian with ECI Metrocare Services. She has a great presentation for us today. But first, I want to give a brief introduction about the Discover With Me workshops. These are components of a family place library and is a 5-week series. Our South Library has been designated as a family place library since 2016, and we typically run these workshops twice a year in person. But now, in this time period of social distancing, we have the opportunity to do this in a virtual format. Family place libraries are a network of children's librarians who embrace the fact that literacy begins with birth, and libraries can help build healthy communities by nourishing healthy families. And we hope to be a change agent in that our library becomes a community center for early literacy and learning, parent education and engagement, family support, and community connectivity to help ensure all children are ready to enter school and able to learn. So thanks for joining us today. I think just a couple housekeeping things is to go ahead and please put any questions you have in chat, and I will make sure that Janelle has those so she can answer those questions for you. And keeping your video or your audio on mute would be very helpful. And I also put the survey link to the program in the chat for you all to use during this presentation. I know also that Janelle has shared some handouts with me that I do have now saved, and I'm very happy to send to you after the webinar. So with that in mind, I will have Janelle take the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm so excited to be here and just share a little bit about what I do and just toddler nutrition specifically, and just how to offer the best type of foods and the best type of portion sizes just for kiddos um, 0 to 3. So we can go ahead and get started. Okay, so first of all, I know you guys had a little bit of a presentation regarding brain development last time, and I just want to kind of like tag team on that and just emphasize how important it is between zero to 2 specifically, just brain development and how or what we feed our kiddos and how it actually impacts. So as we know, brain development occurs mostly between 0 to 2. So that's like the most critical stage between just kiddos' lives. So it's really important to start emphasizing, healthy fats for brain development, lean proteins for muscle building, good sources of calcium and vitamin D, and then healthy grains, just to nourish the brain function. And then we're gonna start with 1-year-old. So I did email Corrine all the little handouts because these are kind of small. I am gonna go through each little section in a little bigger of a picture, and then you can also she can also email it to you guys, or however she can get them to you guys, just if you want them just for personal purposes. So we're going to start with grains. So I want to go over both 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds and just showing you guys what are the appropriate portions for each kiddo, just because I feel like I work with kids 0 to 3, and one of the biggest misconceptions is always my kiddo's not eating enough, like he should be eating more, like, and just comparison between different kids. So I just want to give you guys a little framework of what is a normal typical amount that a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old should be eating. That way we don't panic and start thinking that they're not eating enough. So for example, for 1-year-olds, we usually only recommend 5 to 6 servings of grains. And if you look at this part over here on the left side, their amounts they're pretty minimal. They're pretty small, basically a quarter to half of most foods. And then crackers, it's basically 2 to 3 small crackers. Obviously, we always want to encourage parents to offer whole grains just because those have a little bit more fiber, they have a little bit more B vitamins, and it's just going to help the kiddo be more likely to choose those foods later on in their lives. So how do we know if something is a whole grain, right? So we always want to check the back of the label and see if the first ingredient says 100% whole grain. And that's how we know if this is a whole grain or not. Usually, they recommend having at least half of grains be whole grains, but it's up to the family. Other types of grains that you could offer are legumes, or like lentils, chickpeas, and beans. And even if you have like less than one, so zero to one. So if they have started eating grains, if they're 6 months, maybe probably at 8 or 10 months, you could also start introducing legumes like lentils, chickpeas, beans, probably mashed and not like a hard consistency. And then for cereals, we always want to encourage parents to try to choose cereals that are less than 10 grams of sugar. Even 10 grams might be a little bit too much, because at this age, we really want to limit added sugars because they don't really serve a purpose. So always looking at the back of the label, and I know now labels have been updated and they even tell you how much of the sugars are added and how much are natural, right? So if they're natural, that's a little bit better. But if they're added, we really want to limit it to less than like 10 grams per serving. And then we just want to see the comparison between 1-year-old and two. So if you see 1-year-olds, they need 5 to 6 of these choices. And then when we jump to 2-year-olds, they need 6 of these choices. So the difference is not a big difference. So it's kind of the same portions. They just need one more serving of the grains. And then we're going to move on for the fruit section. So we're going through all the food groups just to have a better idea of this. So for fruits, we usually recommend 3 or more servings. And if you look at the left side, the servings are tiny as well, like a quarter cup. And then juice is always something that I want to point out, that is not something that kids need for growth or for development. It's really something just added once in a while that shouldn't be part of the day. Only if the kiddo is suffering from constipation, we usually recommend maybe adding 4 ounces maximum of a juice, and trying to have a juice that is 100% fruit juice and doesn't have like a lot of high fructose corn syrup or just added sugar in general. I also encourage parents, I know a lot of them like to make their own juices, so if that's you, then that would be even a better option. But for healthy choices of fruit, I always have parents that ask if canned is better than frozen, or if fresh is better than frozen. And what I always tell them is any of those 3 options, fresh fruits or canned fruits or frozen fruits, they're all healthy as long as they don't have the added sugars or added salts or a lot of added additives. So if you do canned, trying to do the low sugar option, so it has to say packed in 100% fruit juice, and it doesn't have to say like packed in syrup. If it's syrup, then you know that they have a lot of added sugars. Frozen fruit is awesome as well. I love it because they actually pick them up whenever it's the most ripe state. So they have the most vitamins and minerals. As long as it doesn't have added sugar, it should be fine. So that is the portion for fruits. And then if we go to 2-year-olds, we see that they just add 1 more serving. So it's literally the same amount, but we just need 1 more serving per day. And then we're gonna go to veggies. So I know vegetables are the hardest sometimes for kiddos, but I wanna encourage you guys to always try to plate them in their plates, because at this point, we want them to be exposed to the vegetables. The more the kids are exposed to veggies, even if they don't wanna eat them, the more likely it is that they'll eventually try them. So if you put it in the plate and your kiddo just doesn't want to eat it, then don't try to not to put a lot of pressure on them, and try not to bring it up. Let's try not to like bribe them. Like, if you don't eat this, you won't get this. The best way to help kiddos be comfortable and not have pressure is kind of ignoring them at meal times, like ignoring if they're not eating, not bringing up like what they're eating, what they're not eating, kind of just being there and like enjoying the process with them. And then just remember, you're doing your part. You're putting the food in their plate, and then it's their responsibility and it's their choice to determine what they're going to eat, right? So for veggies, it's kind of the same as fruits. They need about 3 servings, and it's kind of the same amount as well, which is a quarter of a cup. And then they also give the option of adding any vegetable juice. So if your kiddo maybe doesn't like a lot of fruit juice, you could try vegetable juice just to get some veggies. You can also add vegetable juice to soups or to spaghetti sauce or anything like that if your kiddo's not eating veggies, just to add those nutrients. It's an easy way. And then also trying to have a variety, right? We always want to emphasize dark green or orange veggies just for that vitamin A and that vitamin C. But then also, I wanted to point out healthy choices. So canned is also a good option. If you're like Janelle, like actual fresh veggies are really expensive. I can afford those with my family. We always encourage to try canned and try to get the low sodium. And if you can't get the low sodium, a good trick is to just wash the veggies or soak them in water for like 30 minutes, and then the salt usually comes out. Another thing is frozen veggies. So definitely frozen veggies are an awesome option, especially if you feel like your family doesn't use veggies a ton and then they go bad. So frozen, they will never go bad. You can just grab a little bit at a time, and you don't have to waste the veggies. And then if we look at the difference for 1 year old, it's 3 servings, and for 2 year olds, they get 4 servings, and it's kind of the same amount. So that's whenever your kiddo turns 2, there's not a big difference, right? It's usually maybe you adding one more portion of that food to be able to meet his needs for or her needs for the whole day. And then we're going to go to protein. So I have a lot of kiddos that don't typically want protein, and I just want to encourage you and tell you that is really typical for 1, 2 year olds, just because the texture is a little bit different. So it's a little bit harder to chew. They're not used to that rubbery texture of protein. But it's also a good idea to continue offering until they get more comfortable, and also offering it in smaller amounts, either like ground types of proteins like ground beef, ground chicken, and also eggs. Eggs are really, really easy. But for proteins, usually 1 year olds need about 3 to 4 options throughout the day. And if you look at the portions, they're actually really, really tiny. So they need 3 or 4 portions of 1 tablespoon. So that's a really, really small amount. If you're offering an egg, they're not supposed to eat the whole egg, right? Their serving size is like half of an egg. So if they're only eating that, that is okay. Obviously, if they eat the whole egg, then that just means they got 2 portions of the day and they just need 1 or 2 more. So it's okay if they're eating a little bit more. These are just serving sizes of the minimum that they should be getting to be able to meet their needs. If you look at, for example, beans, it's only 2 tablespoons. Peanut butter, it's only half. Tofu, it's only 2 tablespoons. So it's also a good idea to introduce them to vegan proteins, right? So like beans, legumes, lentils, tofu, peanut butter, those are also good options if your kid is not really into the actual animal proteins. And then if you look at 2 year olds, they just need 4 of the choices versus 1 year olds, they need 3 to 4. So it's just a small difference. And then I wanted to talk a little bit more about protein and seafood because that's a really big question that a lot of my parents have. Just like, when can my kiddo eat, seafood? When can I introduce? So usually we recommend, now the guidelines say that kiddos can start being introduced to seafood, the earlier the better. Obviously, if your kiddo has an actual allergy that you know of, or there's a family history of a seafood allergy, then I would consult with your doctor. But if there's no family history, there's nothing that you know of, you could start introducing fully cooked seafood. So it could be like fully cooked tilapia or salmon whenever they are about 6 to 8 months. The earlier the better. The same with peanut butter as well. So I usually recommend fully cooked, obviously, and then salmon is a really, really good option just because it's really rich in omega-3s, which is really important between 0 to 2 for brain and eye development. So usually I found with my families that is one of the nutrients that is really lacking in their diet because kiddos, maybe parents don't buy a lot of fish, or kiddos just they're not exposed to it, so they never get it. So I would encourage you guys, salmon is a really, really good source for the DHA, which is essential for brain and eye development. If you feel like your kiddo doesn't really like those type of foods, you can also try pollock fish sticks, which are more like chicken nuggets because they're kind of breaded, but they still have a little bit of omega-3, and they're kind of just fun. They just grab them and they can eat them. It's like a finger food. You can also try shrimp as long as it's sliced lengthwise. That way, it's not a choking hazard. And then canned tuna. So canned tuna, I always recommend either Safe Catch or Wild Planet. They're really good brands. They don't have a ton of mercury. And then usually I recommend mixing it with either, avocado or plain Greek yogurt instead of doing the mayonnaise, just because it makes it a little bit healthier. And optimally, we want to try to offer these foods like 2 to 3 times per week just to be able to meet their DHA needs. If your kiddo's not really into seafood, you could try New Horizon fortified milk. If they're over one, right? If they're under one, we don't want to do any type of whole milk. We just want to do formula or breast milk. But you could try that brand has added DHA, or you could try a fish supplement, or you can actually try, there's a brand of eggs that actually fortifies with DHA. So if they like eggs, you could try to buy fortified eggs. And this is just a really cool chart that it kind of tells you what types of fish are safe for either yourself and for if you're pregnant, or for your kiddos. So these on the left are the best choices because they tend to have less mercury. So if you get these sources, you can actually have 2 to 3 servings per week. So for example, cod is a pretty typical one that you could try. Shrimp is here as well. Tilapia is here. What I want to point out is tuna is here, but it's the canned light type of tuna. If you go to this side, the tuna that's albacore white, that one has a little bit more mercury, so you wouldn't want to do this one several times a week. You would only want to limit it to 1 time a week just because it has higher amounts of mercury, which we don't want to expose our kiddos to that too much because they're tinier than us. And then obviously choices to avoid. I don't think any of us do a lot of these, like shark or, any of this, but then it's just good reminder to know about the tuna. The canned light is a little bit better than the albacore white. And then we are going to move on to dairy. I'm just going to put us here in the middle. So dairy, usually this is a topic of conversation just because parents usually are giving kiddos a little bit more than what is needed. So for dairy, we usually recommend not more than 16 ounces of milk. And that is just because milk is not a high iron food. And at this point, kids need foods that are high in iron to meet their needs. So we want to limit to 16 ounces. And also, if we're doing more than that, they tend to not be eating a ton during the day. So we really, really want to emphasize that. Kiddos do need whole fat milk until they're 2, and then after they're 2, they're okay with 2% or 1%, just because the brain development part is really important between 0 to 2. And then I just have some different alternatives here for milk. If you say my kiddo doesn't really like milk at all, like what can I do as an option? So you could either, supplement with other dairy. So you could either add cheese to their diet, or you could either add yogurt to their diet. But if you're like, they don't really like that either, you could try soy milk. That is a good option. So dairy alternatives would be soy milk, pea milk, or almond milk. They all have their pros and cons. But for example, soy milk is kind of pretty similar to cow's milk just because it has fat. So remember, from 0 to 2, it's really important brain development. So we do want to get a milk that has fat. So this one has fat. It is fortified with vitamin D, and it also has calcium. So this would be a good option. And it also has protein. So if you see, it has 6 grams of protein. The other options could be almond milk or pea milk. Almond milk is not my favorite for 2-year-olds or for 1-year-olds, just because it's not really high in protein. It only has 1 gram of protein. But if you say my kiddo eats protein all the time, he eats chicken, he eats eggs, and they wouldn't be a concern, right? Only if your kiddo doesn't really eat a lot of proteins, then you would want to make sure you grab a milk that has some protein in there. And then pea milk is also a really, really good option for kiddos that have allergies to soy or to cow milk. If you see, it's high in calories. It does have 8 grams of protein, the same as whole milk. So that's a really good point there. And then it is fortified with calcium right here, and then vitamin D as well. So that could be a really, really good option. And then this is just to give you a little framework. So dairy sources of calcium would be, like I talked about, yogurt, cheese, or any cow milk product. And then non-dairy, if you are saying my kid doesn't really like anything with dairy, you could try tofu, broccoli, ground flax meal that you can add to like puddings, or you can add to oatmeal. Almond butter has a little bit of calcium that you can, just give them a toast with almond butter. Fortified orange juice is pretty easy. So these are just other options if you feel like your kid wouldn't want any of the other discussed. And then vitamin D. I feel like vitamin D is something that kids lack a lot if they're not doing any dairy, just for allergic reasons or preference. So there's not a lot of toddler-friendly foods that are high in vitamin D. So for example, salmon is, canned tuna, mushrooms, but what kid is going to eat mushrooms, right? Eggs have a little bit, but then if they don't really like those types of foods, you can try fortified foods. So like the milk that we talked about, orange juice, cereals and oatmeal actually are fortified with vitamin D, some of them. But if you feel like your kiddo's really not getting any of these things and you feel like they're not getting it through the diet, you can also consider like vitamin D drops or just sun exposure, right? Taking them outside for like 30 minutes just to get some sun. But always talk to your pediatrician before, adding any type of vitamins or minerals, just to make sure that they're not going to get to the upper limit of what they actually need. And then we're gonna get to the fat portion. So as I talked about, 1 to 2 year olds, like fat is really, really important. And we wanna try to offer fats that are healthy. So for example, olive oil that has the monosaturated fats, nut butters, avocado. So trying to limit all those trans fats. And how do you know if a food has trans fat or if an oil is trans fat? Usually on the label, it'll say partially hydrogenated oils. So if you see this in a label, that usually means that there's trans fat, which is not recommended for basically nobody, especially kids. And even if the label on the back says 0 trans fat, it still might have 0.5 if it has this ingredient on the back. So just something to think about, trying to emphasize, healthy fats for brain development. Try not to do a lot of saturated and a lot of trans fat because it's not recommended at all for kids or for adults. And now we're going to talk a little bit about healthy snacks. So I get this question a lot, Janelle, what's a healthy snack? My kid loves snacks and they just want to be snacking all day. So I was like, well, might as well educate on what is a healthy snack. So usually for healthy snacks, we're looking for foods that are less than 6 grams of added sugar. We want more than 2 grams of protein just so they can actually be satiated and not, want so many snacks because they'll get full if it's more than 2 grams of protein. We want to do less than 250 milligrams of sodium just because that is a lot of sodium if it has more than that. And we want more than 2 grams of fiber. And that's just because fiber helps them get full. So if they have a lot of fiber and it has a lot of protein, they're less likely to be asking for a ton of snacks. So these are just some examples of convenient, healthy snack options. Obviously, I always recommend fruits and vegetables as snacks, but sometimes life gets hard and life is busy. So these are just some convenient things that you can just buy. So these are Nature Valley biscuits, and they're pretty good. They have as a first ingredient whole grains and almond butter. It does have a little bit more sugar than expected. It has like 9 grams, but at least the first 2 ingredients are pretty good and everything else is good. It has healthy fats, the sodium's pretty good, and it has a little bit of fiber. Another option is the Harvest Snaps. They're lightly salted, but what I like about these is that there's few ingredients. They're made of actual peas and they have a really good source of fiber, protein, and fat. And then there's basically less than 1 gram of sugar. So there's like really no sugar. So if you have kiddos that love chips and they just want to do chips and crunchy foods, this could be a good option because it's made of vegetables and it gives them that crunchy texture as well. And then whenever you don't have time to just, cut an apple or cut a mandarin or a cutie, you could try these. These are made with 100% fruit juice and they're really easy to pack. They're lightly sweetened, but it's with stevia. So it's a natural sweetener. It's not Splenda, it's not equal, and it's low in added sugar. So it only has 5 grams of sugar, which is pretty good. Another healthy snack option is raisins. So this is definitely for 1 year up because they don't have, if it's less than 1, they might not be able to chew it well, but be cautious on the first try, right? And then you can also try cutting dates, prunes, dried figs, just because those are really sweet and it just helps them with the calcium content and also potassium. But I wanted to point out these do have a lot of sugar, 20 grams, but since this is an actual fruit that is dehydrated, that is okay. So if it's natural sugar, we don't want to be super concerned, right, with how much, but if it's added sugar, then that's when we want to back up a little bit. And then this is a really good option too for kiddos that love crunchy foods. And it's not as messy, right, than actual strawberries in the car. So you could try these freeze-dried fruits. There's a ton of different types. I think there's mango, there's strawberry, there's banana. And then it's natural sugar. It doesn't have any added sugar, and it's perfect for kids that have a sweet tooth. I even prefer these over like puffs, just because puffs really don't have a nutritional value. But actual fruit that is dehydrated, it has all the antioxidants, all the vitamins and minerals that a piece of strawberry would have. And then this is another option, like Triscuit Thin Crisp. Instead of chips, this could be good. Obviously, for older than 1, it might take a little while for them to get the chewing because these are a little bit harder. So maybe for 2-year-olds, this would be indicated. And then these are really fun too. They're little popcorn mini cakes. They are a really good source of fiber. They have a little bit of protein. They have healthy fats. And they're low in sugar. So this is another good option just for on the go that you're just needing a snack. And then cheese sticks. So it could be a cheese stick or a cheese little ball. These are just really easy to pair with something else just to help with the satiety content and for them to be able to stay full for a little bit longer. You can try other types of cheeses too, like mozzarella, Monterey Jack, cheddar cheese. You can cut them in small little pieces, or you can do the string cheese is also really convenient. And then I just wanted to point out, for example, this one, it might seem a little bit healthy, but if you look, it has a ton of added sugar, so 12 grams, and it also has a lot of ingredients. I usually say try the less ingredients, the better. And also the sugar is just a really important one to look for. So just try to do, I would say 10 or less, 6 to 10 or less grams per serving. And then this is just a fun little picture of options. So I know parents, sometimes they tell me, well, my kid just likes roll-ups. So I just wanted to give them an option. Okay, if they like roll-ups, could we try any of these instead? So these are a little bit healthy roll-ups. They're called Stretch Island fruit roll-ups that you can buy on Amazon. You could try fruit chips. You can try dehydrated fruits like mango, dates, figs, and cut them in little pieces. Or you could just try actual, fresh fruit is also a great option. This is other option. So instead of regular goldfish, trying to make it a little bit healthier, you could try whole grain goldfish. Instead of veggie sticks that really have no nutritional value, you could try making your own stick. So you could do either, carrots or, if your kiddo is old enough to be able to chew this, with guacamole or with hummus. Or you could try making your own little sticks of sweet potato or fries on, baked. And trying to just put it with a little dip on the side. If your kiddo loves potato chips, these are other options that are healthier. They're for example, this one, Simple Mills. I love this brand just because all their crackers are made with almond flour. You could also try banana chips, and you can also try the Triscuit minis. These are really good, and they're really high in fiber. Another question that I get all the time is protein bars, or just little granola bars. My kiddo loves these granola bars. Are these healthy? And usually they're a little bit high in sugar. So another good option could be adult Lara bars. Has no added sugar, but you could try just doing half because it is kind of high in protein. I would just do half of these, but these are a good option and they really taste very good. You could also try the Quaker organic ones. They're really not super high in sugar as the regular, granola bars. Or this brand that is relatively new, it's called That's It, and they're fruit bars. So these are just other options that you could try. And then I want to just point out a little bit about protein needs because I do get this question a lot, how much should my kiddo be getting of protein in a day? And usually I just want to help you calm your nerves because usually protein for kiddos, they do not need a lot of protein. For example, if your kiddo's 24 pounds, he probably just needs half of that, which is 12 grams of protein. And then if you want to look at the right side over here, wait, let me go back. The right side, this kind of tells you how much food you would need to cover 16 grams or 12 grams of protein. So if your kiddo's already getting 2 cups of milk, he's already getting 16 grams of protein. So he's already getting even more than what he needs. If he's getting 2 ounces of chicken, he's already getting 16 grams of protein. If he's eating 2 eggs, he's getting 12 grams of protein. If he eats a peanut butter sandwich on whole wheat bread, he's getting 15 grams of protein. So just to ease your nerves, if your kiddo's getting around 2 cups of milk, he's already probably getting close to enough to his protein needs. And then I had one more thing about iron, since this is another topic of conversation. So for iron needs, usually kids don't need a lot, but we usually recommend focusing on animal sources. So for example, beef, pork, turkey, chicken, and eggs. But if your keto is not really into those foods, you can also try the vegetarian sources. So the ones that kids are more likely to eat is tofu if you season it, lentils, chickpeas, beans, or fortified cereals. So if you buy like Cheerios, oatmeal, spaghetti that is fortified with iron, this could be a really good way to do that. And then always remember whenever you're offering foods with iron to pair it with something with vitamin C, just because vitamin C increases the absorption of iron. So maybe adding a little bit of lemon, adding a fruit on the side, just so it can be paired with the iron source. Adding oranges or bell peppers or broccoli to the meal. Those are just good options. And this is just kind of like an example of how to pair, plant-based iron with vitamin C. So for example, if you offer a fortified cereal like Cheerios, you can add some strawberries or offer strawberries on the side. If you offer a bread with nut butter, you can put oranges on the side. Trying a legume pasta with marinara sauce. So these are just kind of some options that you could try if this is something that concerns you. And then this is another area or another way to add iron. So if your kiddo is really, really picky and you feel like he wouldn't eat any of those foods, there's this little fish called you could try the cast iron pan that you can cook in, or you can also try the lucky iron fish that you just drop in the food and it kind of releases some iron. Always consult with your doctor though if this is something that you would want to try. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is just sugar sweetened beverages. So I know we talked about how trying to limit the juice to 4 ounces is usually appropriate. So I just wanted to go over like some of the recommended options. So always opting for 100% fruit juice, but then Honest juice is one of the ones I really, really like just because it has only 8 grams of sugar for the whole little packet. So that would be a brand that I definitely encourage using if juice is something that is a part of your kid's diet. Or if you just get the WIC recommended brand, you can always just try to dilute it so it's not super concentrated in sugar. So those are just some types of juices there. And then any questions? I know I went pretty fast, but I wanted to leave time for questions at the end.
Right. Yeah, there's plenty of questions. I mean, plenty of time for that. Thanks so much, Janelle, for all this information. If anyone does have any questions, if you put it in the chat, I will read them to Janelle. And we'll give you a few minutes. I had a quick question, if you don't mind. Do you, with peanut butter, and I know there's the chance of peanut allergies, do you talk to your doctor first before giving peanut butter? Or
Yeah. So I usually recommend like if your family doesn't have any medical history of allergies or any known allergies, it's usually pretty safe. But you always want to double check and just ask your doctor to make sure that it's indicated, especially if you are not sure what age that you should do it. So always asking the pediatrician if you're ever going to change anything or add a supplement or try a new food. That's always a good idea.
Great, thank you. Another question came in. Can we give fresh or canned coconut water?
So yes, so if your kiddo's over 1, that would be probably okay. I just wouldn't want to add a lot of like added sugars or just drinks before they're 1, just because infants are usually like their thirst tells them that they're hungry. So they usually feel thirsty and that's why they want formula. So if you're filling their tummy with any type of juice or just coconut water, then they won't feel that thirst for actual nutrient dense formula and they'll get full with pure, coconut water. So if they're over 1, that is totally fine adding a little bit of coconut water to their diet. Obviously, 4 ounces is usually what we recommend. No, not more than 4 ounces.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Any other questions? There was a thank you there for that.
Yeah.
And also, I do just want to remind everybody that we have the same survey link up in the chat with the same invitation code, DIS, if you could take a minute or so of your day to take that survey and let us know how we did. Again, I will put my email in the chat in case you want me to send the, I'm sorry, uh,
Mhm.
flyers or papers. I can't think today. The information that Janelle has, I could send to you as well. So you would have this as a guide. And I do have one other question. If my kid still drinks 3 bottles of milk around 24 ounces a day, should I change to almond milk or soy milk instead of giving whole milk, or stay with whole milk?
How old is the kiddo?
Old is the child.
Two. Yeah. So, is there a weight issue or no? Is his weight healthy? No, no weight issue. Yeah. So I don't think you need to change if there's no weight issue. What I would recommend is just starting to decrease slowly. So what you could do is if you're giving him 3 bottles, you could try 6 ounces of milk and then just dilute a little bit with water. So he thinks it's 8. If you feel like he wouldn't notice, just because we don't want him to be drinking that much because his iron can go down a little bit and then he might not be actually hungry for foods. I don't know if you've noticed that. Is he eating pretty well too? Yes, yeah. So that's probably why. So if you feel like he's not eating pretty well, then you could maybe move to like 2%. But I would just say maybe start decreasing to 3 bottles of 6 ounces, add a little bit of water just to make him think that it's 8. And then kind of offering the milk only after he's actually eaten. Because if not, he's going to get full pretty quick and then he's not going to want to eat food. Yeah.
Right. So I put my email in the chat, and the survey link is in the chat as well. So I am happy to send out the information. I do now have the flyers from last week as well, so I can send those out to those of you who would like me to send them. And if there's no other questions, I just really want to thank you, Janelle and Donnie, for providing this information for us at this time. And for those of you that signed in to view this Discover With Me workshop, I really appreciate it. And I hope you found the information helpful.
Yes, thank you for everything. It was really, really fun.